So hello everybody, welcome to a video where I'm going to react to my video of Could Analog Horror Survive the Doomslayer? Which is kind of like a part 2 to our first video that kind of catapulted my channel, which is Can the Doom Marine from Doom survive analog horror? So let's get into it. You know, I'm going to provide some director's commentary, some little insights about the video, and let's do it. Okay, so for this video, pretty much the other video got a bunch of views. You know, so I was kind of scrambling to, you know, get something to capitalize on, and I'm like, okay, I said this in the last video. People wanted it. So, why not just make the video? And it did pretty darn well, and it was pretty much my... Essentially, from the moment it got posted, it got a bunch of views. Like, crazy views. So I kind of did feel like a YouTuber for a little bit. Or like an actual, real, famous YouTuber. So okay, let's get into it. Can some of the most powerful and dangerous creatures from analog horror survive the power of the Doomslayer? Well, in this video, I'm going to examine some powerful analog horror creatures to see if they could survive a run-in with the Doomslayer. The analog horror series that I will include in this one-sided debate are Monument Mythos, Gemini Home Entertainment, and Monument Mythos, the Nixonverse. Which, okay, with the picks, the Gemini Home Entertainment was because I, you know, I was gonna do a section in the previous, you know, Doom Guy video, but cut it for time because I wanted it out by Halloween. And since I wasn't very efficient with my editing, especially not with this new style, I just kind of cut that out, so that's why that's in there. And with the other two, I mean, those are like the strongest analog horrors, you know, from like a power scaling, whatever. So that's why those are in there. It's also Monument Mythos, but it's different enough to count it in. So to set the stage for the video, let's begin with the Doomslayer, a never-tiring harbinger of slaughter who has taken down gods without breaking a sweat. Since scaling exact numbers and precise data for his strength is near impossible for a being that transcends reality, yeah, pretty much that's correct. But okay, for the Doomslayer, I did look into a lot of the things, but like I was still kind of new to, you know, researching a character in the power scaling sense. So again, couple things were off, couple things I may have overlooked or forgot to just mention in the video. Because one way I do them is I get, you know, like the Doomslayer and then like the creatures I'm gonna have in there, write little bits of info that I get from the sources, and then I start like formulating the script. Sometimes I forget to read again the little bits of info and I miss things, or I don't elaborate or whatever, especially in these first few videos. Instead, focus on what he has actually accomplished to get a better idea as to what a god killer like the Doomslayer can do. In the game Doom Eternal, he has slain powerful foes who are no stranger to warping and tearing reality apart, those of which are the manifestation of sin, who warps, distorts, and destroys reality just by existing. And to add on to this impressive feat, the icon of sin is also indestructible, so the Doomslayer had to get up close and personal to the reality-destroying titan to stab him in the brain in order to neutralize him. His next most notable feat is his battle with the creator of everything in the Doom series, a god who can create, change, and alter reality as he pleases. This was the Doomslayer's strongest foe, himself, and he beat himself quite easily. So even the Doomslayer's not enough for the Doomslayer. Now let's take a look at what he used to vanquish those incredibly powerful enemies. And just to keep things simple, let's focus on a stronger weaponry. The BFG 10,000. But yeah, focusing on just that because the video is already not long, but for editing it's long. So I just kind of really try to condense as much stuff as I can. And that's what I kind of do with the videos, because I don't want to edit so much because I want to do other things. Because prior to, you know, being a current, or right now a analog horror Trevor Henderson and whatever the hell else power scaler, I was doing like animation, music, and all that stuff. So I'm just trying to like shorten it so I have time to actually do the stuff that I want to do. The Doomslayer's strongest firearm can blast a hole into planets like it did with Mars. His next most devastating weapon is the Unmaker, which fires highly concentrated Argent bolts that rival the BFG in its destructive power. Then we have the Ballista, a weapon that can vaporize foes using heated Argent energy. Then there is signature weapon, the Super Shotgun, which seems like a normal double-barrel shotgun, but this one can blast through just about anything, given that the Doomslayer essentially powers up any of his weapons, so they do much more than what they could normally do. As for melee, the Doomslayer has two main options. His Crucible, a blade made of Hell Energy and Argent mixed together to form a blade that can cut through just about anything and neutralize even the strongest of Titans. And now for his strongest, most dangerous weapon. His hands. Yes, his hands. It is... Actually, I was gonna also put the hammer, but it's like... You know... time. I didn't want to put too much stuff in there, so I just kind of went for the Doom Eternal Slayer instead of the Battle of Gods. But I just took into notice that that even Doom Eternal Slayer can, you know, do the stuff that ancient gods can do. Stated that he prefers using artillery and firearms that are already supercharged by his will to prolong the suffering of demons, because his hands would just be too quick, and finishing things off too quick isn't ideal, especially when you're having fun. For his durability, he is pretty much invincible, and somehow you can manage to kill the unkillable. He just respawns back in hell. Good as new, keep fighting. Once you got him targeting you, you might as well just give it up and let it happen, or fight for eternity. That is if you can, because Doom is eternal. Mutated Neptune is the first planet seen in Gemini Home Entertainment that has been mutated by the Iris. What makes it special is that it's a giant gas planet with a bunch of other creatures from Gemini Home Entertainment. It serves as a transport of sort for these creatures, so they can actually get to Earth via a large blast. The Iris, though, is the main antagonist, having the ability to mutate planets and travel around space. It has some minor reality warping powers, as well as telepathy and technopathy. So how do both planets compare? Well, let's begin with Neptune. To give the gas giant the best possible chance, let's say that its blasts are more than just a means of transportation of little creepy crawlies. If the Doomslayer came across this planet, then Neptune would use its limited attacks to try and get the Doomslayer away. After some pitiful attempts, the Doomslayer would just have to blast it with the BFG 10,000 to put a large hole in the planet, and a couple more blasts to make Neptune look like some blue Swiss cheese. The Iris would then respond to the threat of the Doomslayer by sending out... Actually, wait, that one photo just I got a Markiplier thumbnail, slapped I think like a Doom helmet, or I probably just found this image or something like that, but it's supposed to be like a Markiplier thumbnail. Blue Swiss cheese. The Iris would then respond to the threat of the Doomslayer by sending out every creature it could muster, and then they would all go extinct, and then it will try to use some of its telepathy and reality warping powers. When this doesn't work, it will use its technopathy to try and disable some of the weapons of the Slayer. If we say that this works, then no problem. The Slayer has a badass blade at his disposal that can tear up the living planet, so incredibly easy win for the Doomslayer, although it would take a little bit of time. I mean, it's a whole giant planet, you know. Now for Monument Mythos, arguably one of the strongest and most dangerous analog horrors. For this series, I will just use the Air Force One Angel and the Horned Serpent. Should have went with more, if I'm being honest. Like, the Air Force One Angel is like... At the moment, it seemed like a good pick, but like, you know, after... Especially doing like the Kratos video, it wasn't really that great of a pick. But yeah, any more that are similarly as powerful, but they're about the same. For the Air Force One Angel, it's a metaphysical being compromised of young soldiers who join together because of their strong devotion to a cause. Since it exists in a metaphysical level, it eludes the laws of physics. This makes it incorporeal, so it can phase through solid objects. Its abilities include being able to manipulate light and electricity, and use that as an attack, or to disable and manipulate weaponry that uses electricity. It is functionally immortal, meaning that if not killed, it could live absolutely forever. Then we got the Horned Serpent. It's the strongest of pretty much the original Monument Mythos. No, it's the strongest of all the Monument Mythos. Because I was watching like other people's videos of analog horrors to get like an idea of what to put in, especially for this matchup. And in one of them, they just kind of said that, oh, like, I don't know, Nixon or something in the Monument Mythos was stronger. But after actually researching a little bit deeper and being corrected in the comments, that's like not true. because like Nixon is a part of the Horned Serpent. So that's a whoops, my bad. This serpent came from George Washington. Yes, I'm not joking. It's a large entity that resembles a massive planet-sized snake that can warp and manipulate reality, teleport, use telepathy, and can even create realities. And it's still George Washington. So, can the Doomslayer beat George Washington or the Air Force One Angel? That's a wild sentence. Can Doomslayer beat George Washington? Begin with the Air Force One Angel. It would not be safe from the Doomslayer even if it is incorporeal. The Doomslayer is able to attack the Angel because of his willpower that gives him the ability to do whatever's necessary to get the job done. Any of his normal weapons should be more than enough, but for the sake of argument, let's say that nothing can really damage the Air Force One Angel because of its incorporeal nature. Well, the Doomslayer has just the ghost-busting tool in his arsenal, which is the plasma rifle. Yeah, I kind of forgot to mention it, but it can kind of, microwave spirits until they explode. So, what would pretty much go down, Doomslayer may not be able to really shoot it with its normal stuff, but, you just have to pull out the microwave beam and start cooking up a nice dinner with it. As for George Washington, or the Horned Serpent, it would be much like, Thor and Jormungand. Okay, another thing. The Jormungand, okay. There's even like clips of it and stuff with like this video in the comments. I think the reason why I said that was because there are two reasons. One, the other fella that I play with, he's big into like this Norse stuff and all that, and I would just kind of say things wrong to piss him off. And I think another reason is, let's see, probably being schizophrenic. There we, okay, look, I was big into Beyblades, right? And Jormungand or whatever. That's why I said it like that. I mixed up this, and I kind of just wrote it like Jormungand in the info stuff and just kind of forgot to change it. And yes, I am, well aware, especially now, that it's Jormungandr or even Jormungandr if you want to say it in an American accent. But if Thor had guns, the Doomslayer would pretty much start shooting at it, tearing parts of it off while the serpent desperately tries to use its powers to try and warp reality and just find a way out away from the Doomslayer. After seeing that it's pretty much futile, the Doomslayer would just pretty much attack it and it would play out in the Doomslayer's favor. But if he, for some reason, couldn't kill it by normal means, then he has the Crucible, which could very easily disable that massive titan of a serpent. So what about the stronger version of Monument Mythos, the Nixonverse? Well, let's look at some of the strongest of the Nixonverse, which is Nixon, Richard Nixon, this fella right here. Yeah, I'm not joking. And you also have the Crescent King, along with obviously a couple others, but let's just keep it simple and keep it to these two. So the Crescent King is a mimetically immortal being, which means that in order to beat him, you have to pretty much have him be forgotten about, or just kind of incapacitate him and neutralize him, so he can't really do anything. His abilities include manipulation of mind and soul, possession, nuclear power generation, incorporeality, and can create illusions. Now, for the most interesting one, Nixon. Some of his powers are fate immunity, creation, precognition, reality warping, and fictionalization, to name a few. And this ability of fate immunity pretty much means that he is a... Yeah, another thing about the fate immunity, which was also kind of buried in like the wiki, which I didn't see, was that it's more so like due to what he's made up of and not like an inherent like ability. So, not as broken as I thought it was when I first made the video. Able to escape or be immune to his fate, and fictionalization is the act of making something fiction. So now, let's move on to the confrontation. The Nixonverse versus the Doomslayer. The Crescent King would be more of an annoyance than a threat. His abilities and strengths are comparable to a powerful demon like the Titan in Doom Eternal. Obviously with the mind and soul manipulation and the possession, all of which the Doomslayer is immune to. But everything the Crescent King can throw at him, except maybe the nuclear power, could very well not work. work at all. I mean, it just won't. And even if somehow the nuclear stuff does work, because in the games he kind of does take damage from the radioactive stuff, he just has to put on a rad suit. So, easy win. Ending the fight would be a bit annoying for the Doomslayer because he can't just straight up get rid of him. He has to try to somehow bypass his mimetic immortality, which is much easier said than done, even for the Doomslayer. This is because you gotta pretty much wipe everybody's mind of the Crescent King, and Doomslayer doesn't want to kill normal people. So there's a bit of a stalemate. But he has the Crucible, which can very well be used to neutralize the Crescent King. But let's say he might not be able to actually get to him with the Crucible because of his incorporeal nature. Well, he has the plasma rifle, which he could very annoyingly and kind of funnily just use to stun lock the Crescent King. And this would eventually, the consistent use of the microwave beam would just break the will of the Crescent King, and he would just give up. I mean, who wouldn't? Getting stun locked for eternity and then having your lackeys get chainsawed just to replenish the ammo to keep on going is definitely humiliating. And now for the main event, Nixon from the Nixonverse versus the Doomslayer. Since another wild sentence, Nixon versus the Doomslayer. God, okay, sometimes it does get a bit crazy. The abilities of Nixon parallel those of Davoth, which is the Doomslayer's strongest foe that he faced in games. The battle between Nixon, except Davoth is like higher dimensional or some stuff like that. And then the Doomslayer would play out about the same, with a couple differences. The Doomslayer would go on to attack him and would be able to pretty much back. Also, it's like pretend this is this. I couldn't find any visuals, so I'm just like, okay, screw it. I'm doing this. And now it's like a niche meme on the channel now. Him into a corner, and then not having very many options, he'll try to use his fictionalization and also his fate immunity. And seeing as fictionalization really isn't working on the Slayer, because his anger and willpower shield him against that reality warping attack, Nixon would then have to rely on his fate immunity to pretty much survive. And since this is still a reality warping ability, because it changes what's supposed to happen, the Doomslayer effectively counters this. So there are two ways that he can be defeated. One way is just through brute force and a bunch of blasts and throwing hands, which pretty fun way to, end things off. And then the next one would be just with the Crucible. Now, you might argue that the abilities of fictionalization and fate immunity could work, but you'd have to look at what happened with Davoth. This fella right here is pretty much the whole entire creator inside the lore of Doom Eternal. It would be wise to infer that Davoth is able to defy fate if he needs to, and the Icon of Sin changes reality around him and even destroys it. Destroying and changing reality is in the same ballpark as being free of your fate or turning things to straight fiction. So, just like with Davoth, this would make it so the Doomslayer wins. To answer the overarching question of the video, can analog horror survive the Doomslayer? Nope, not a chance. It does not matter if they can warp, change, or do whatever they want with reality, cause... Okay, so that's that video. So yeah, a lot better, a lot more accurate than the other one, had a little more experience. But okay, with the editing, I guess I didn't really stick to a formula, so this one's a bit faster paced and, more memes, more, stuff. And like for these videos, especially with the analog horror, I was able to kind of put more B-roll of the actual analog horror in, compared to like the newer stuff. So that's pretty much with the editing. And for the story, well, just didn't have a video idea. Wanted to get something out to capitalize on all of this, all these numbers. Especially with the monetization of the channel. Did this, great idea, and yeah. And currently, although it is not my most viewed video, it was my fastest growing video of all. Which, it was crazy how fast it grew. Like, I can't even match that now, not even close. But okay, that was pretty much that video. Another straight banger. And, for the music, I'm only gonna reveal it till this channel gets monetized. Yeah, hospital debts are crippling.